We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Jessie Spellman. She is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Walmart. Jessie, it's good to see you. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Thanks so much, Christina. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Jessie Spellman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Where do I start? I feel like this question is so difficult to answer, to tell you about myself. So I'll just start with, I really love, this is probably true for everybody, but I have a really incredible group of friends that I love so much. I'm really blessed to have an incredible partner who I also love so much, and I love my family, and I'm a people person, so that's where it is for me. I actually I'm thinking about if I want to tell you the truth about what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I'm going to tell you, I wanted to be president.
Yes, I love that answer. I love an honest answer, and that's incredible. And I love when people answer this question and talk about the relationships in their life as well. For tell me about yourself. I personally have found it really grateful to work at places where we become friends inside and outside of work too. And I think that's really because of the company culture and the folks that are attracted to doing this work. When you think about company culture, what are qualitative and quantitative ways you think about measuring this super dynamic thing of company culture?
It's a great question. And I think if anybody had it fully figured out, you probably wouldn't need this series. But on the qualitative side, I think surveys are actually the best qualitative measure. And I think they're often called quantitative because we try to ascribe numbers to them, but really these are all Likert scales, and these are really just people's opinions and feelings. And surveys are only as good as the psychological safety and inclusion that you have in the organization and how empowered people feel to really express themselves. So I would say engagement surveys are the first answer. But secondly, I think consistency across business segments, business functions, and across the organization are another qualitative way to measure culture. What do I mean by that? I mean, can everyone articulate what the company's mission, values, and vision are? I think at Walmart, we do a pretty good job. Everybody knows save money, live better. That is the number one thing that we are trying to do. And we have 4 core values. And I think that if you ask almost any associate, they could probably tell you it's respect for the individual, integrity, service to the customer, and excellence. On the quantitative side, I actually think about things I think maybe a bit uniquely, but I really am interested in things like promotion rates and retention rates. I really want to know how long are people staying and how are people making that plays a part of their career. And I think that that's a really great metric for culture. Another really common one is employee NPS. I spent several years as a consultant at Bain & Company, so I am very familiar with NPS, and I think it's a great tool.
Absolutely. I think coming back to your values, thinking about how that manifests, and if people can articulate what the values are really important as well. And continually asking the question of how people are feeling and being really specific in the questions you're asking around company culture as well, especially as new people continue to join Walmart's organization too. I know when we were talking earlier, one of the things that we definitely wanted to discuss was around Walmart's anti-racism strategy. Can you tell me a little bit about the goals and pillars of your anti-racism strategy, and where Walmart is in the equity journey, knowing that every person, just like every company, is at a different kind of stage of their diversity, equity, and inclusion journey as well?
I'm going to start with a quote, and I'll probably say some more quotes later today. I love them. But Dr. Beverly Tatum, she was the president of Spelman College, and she wrote a very famous book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And she talks about the ongoing cycle of racism as a moving walkway at the airport. So active racist behavior means that you're walking fast on the conveyor belt towards that racist destination. And if a passive racist behavior means that you're just sort of standing still, no overt effort is being made. But because you're on the belt, you are going to the same destination as those who are actively walking. So what you really need to do is you need to go against the grain. You need to turn around and walk the other way on that walkway, even though the tides might be moving you towards a destination that you're not going towards. And I love this because it's really visual and I can see it. And so what I'll say is we've just started to turn around and we are starting to walk in the other direction of that walkway. We have way more to go, but frankly, so does the country. And so I'll talk about a couple of things. Number one is I want to talk about where I think a lot of our journey started, which was through the Racial Equity Institute, which is a training that all of our officers had to go through. If you're familiar with it, out of Greensboro, North Carolina, it's an incredible organization. And they really ground the lens through which we look at anti-racism through history and through the legal precedents that made our country the way it is today. So with that as the foundation, they used a really wonderful analogy where we talk about individuals as fish, systems as lakes, and then groundwater as the thing that connects all of these things. And this is why we call it systemic racism. And what Walmart did is they took a look at this framework that all of their officers were already familiar with. And they said, how do we actually attack some of these groundwater issues? And they decided that it might be best to do it by looking at lakes and trying to connect those lakes where it made sense. So I'm using this, I hope you're with me on this analogy so far, but we have 4 shared value networks. And these shared value networks are designed to address specific lake issues that Walmart believes if we address these issues and do good, we will also do well as a company. And it will improve our bottom line by expanding opportunities for our employees, as well as our customers and all of our other shareholders and stakeholders. They are finance, criminal justice, education, and healthcare. And so to give you a quick example of how they sometimes intersect, I am working right now with an organization called The Last Mile, which provides opportunities for people who are returned citizens to be placed in technological jobs. And so this is something that we've worked with in partnership with the Education and Criminal Justice SVN. And so this really goes into the way that we believe that doing good can also be good for our business. And so the last thing I'll talk about on our anti-racism strategy is the Center for Racial Equity, which is a specific institute that was designed to complement and extend our business initiatives with the shared value networks.
I love that. I think those specific examples are helpful for folks to really visualize along with analogies. I'm also personally a big quotes person as well. And also what I'm hearing you saying as well is partnering with organizations who are subject matter experts and really narrowing down. There's such huge impacts that employers and companies can have, but what are the main focus areas that you can really have influence and impact in as well, and really naming them, making sure you have that common language and frameworks. I know a lot of organizations is really great are at different parts of their journey, like I mentioned, and also really leaning into anti-racism strategies. I was talking to another leader earlier on the show about their goals towards becoming an anti-racist organization. They're publishing it as well for their employees to know too. And she said, we will never refer to ourselves as a fully anti-racist company because it is a myth. We want to look and see how we can further disrupt the white standards and systems, something that you brought up too around systemic racism. What are your thoughts on this kind of philosophy and thinking about, becoming an anti-racist organization?
She's absolutely right. If Dr. Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be Anti-Racist, became really popular, and if anyone has had a chance to read it, he talks about how capitalism and racism are conjoined twins. And so I'll sort of leave it at that because there are many other scholars who have done a ton of this research. But what I like to say is, and this goes back to the fish, lake, and groundwater analogy, there always need to be interventions that are interpersonal and on that individual level, but we also need to be thinking about systems. So I think about it in terms of being in a business, and so much of being in business is teaching people how to survive the white supremacist patriarchy instead of teaching people how we can start to dismantle it. And so what does that mean? That means that I know when I go into a meeting, I'm going to wear some makeup for me and how I move out throughout the world as a cis white woman. But we also have to be making sure to challenge those norms themselves. Why is it considered professional to put on makeup? And that's the sort of system that we have to work to dismantle, while also teaching people you should probably wear lipstick to that meeting. Whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise is a separate conversation.
Yeah, I think those examples of how we show up are important as well. We're all bringing our lived and learned experiences into the workplace. We have to consistently ask those internal questions. And a lot of folks, as we're continuing to really hire talent and think about creating teams, or consistently auditing the employee experience. Can you tell me about an example of how you've redesigned a system or process, policy, or initiative to be really more equitable over the past 2 years as we're all navigating the new world of work together?
Absolutely. Walmart is working on an incredible initiative that has really broad reaching implications. And it's really simple on its face, and it's just about skills first hiring. So, really emphasizing skills as the first thing that we are basing employment decisions on, rather than thinking about things like credentials or pedigree. So, for example, I went to Penn. That doesn't necessarily mean anything except that it's a fancy school that was super expensive. Obviously, I'm not saying that I didn't get a great education, but there's so much more to an individual and what they offer than where they went to school. Additionally, this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative because we know that there are so many barriers to access to education. I think it's about 40% of white adults have a college degree, and that number I think is around 15% for Black adults. And there are so many reasons for this issue. So while we understand that getting your degree is one way to attaining the skills that make you an excellent employee or associate at Walmart, there are also many other pathways. And so through this emphasis, we have many different initiatives. One is through 110, which their entire model is built on providing 1 million Black Americans family sustaining jobs. And those Black Americans do not have college degrees, in part because of this issue that I just mentioned. And there's also LBU, or Live Better University, at Walmart, which we got a lot of press recently. But anyone who works at Walmart from day one, whether you are supporting us in our stores or you are supporting us in our clubs, DCs, FCs, or you're at the home office, you have access to a 100% paid for college education. And the emphasis there is not so much on that degree, again, or that pedigree, but it's more on what are the skills that you need to do your job better or to help you plan for that career path. So to summarize, I think the really big shift that's going on at Walmart right now is instead of looking at those traditional tick boxes or credential requirements, we're looking at it more holistically. What skills do you have that you can bring to this role, and how do you build those skills for the future of your career?
Absolutely. And what you said around this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. I think it's important to remember that this work is not siloed, and the job requirements that you have in setting those standards are really important, looking at historical, societal, and contextual information to inform how to really create programs that have opportunities for everyone, open up the talent pool are really critical. You fast forward to when people join your organization. I think that a lot of us have heard this saying around people don't leave bad companies or bad jobs, they leave bad managers. And so much of being a manager today is you have to have a lot of skills around people are different on your team, and most likely won't have the same identity as you as well, and navigating those conversations is really critical. So talking about anti-racism strategies at an organizational level is important. From an individual, how do you really hold managers accountable in practice to be anti-racist in their kind of day-to-day and practices there?
I'll answer the question right away, and that's just data. What is the equity in your pass-through rate? So how people are moving through the funnel based on their race or gender identity or ability or what have you. So looking at the groups of people who've been historically excluded and comparing them to the dominant group, they should be moving through at the same rates. And the same should be true for promotion rates. So if 10% of your team identifies as Black or African American, 10% of your promotion should be Black or African American. And that's how we hold people accountable. All that to say, there is so much built into our day-to-day, into our organizations, into our brains. And we also need to make sure that people are equipped with how to practice mitigating their bias day-to-day, and how to redesign their processes to mitigate bias as well. We can't just hold people accountable to this really complicated, really nuanced world and not give them any support. But that said, we have lots of that support, frankly, at Walmart and lots of other organizations. But the way that we can hold them accountable is, look, are people actually, is anyone's identity a predictive factor in how they're going to perform, or is it just their performance? And really making sure that we can reveal that in the data.
Absolutely. Look at that data. I think that's really important as well, and setting people up for success, investing resources, training in kind of, again, those common frameworks too. And when you also look at kind of a year from now, 5 years from now, you want to see kind of what success have we made? Where should we be investing in? What progress has been made? And I think in this work, a lot of folks want to say, okay, how are we doing here? How are we tracking? Understanding that it's a continuous process and a journey. Like you said before, we're not looking to tick boxes or check boxes here as well to say, okay, we've created an equitable workplace, we're done. There's still work to be done, but how do we really think about measuring the progress of anti-racism strategies, knowing that what gets kind of measured gets invested in as well?
It's a really important question, and it depends on how an organization defines their anti-racism strategies. There are so many different ways to go about this. Is it the spend on suppliers? Is it where you're actually putting money and investing in other businesses' pockets? Is it the way people feel at work and the number of reported microaggressions? Is it the promotion rates? Is it the pass-through rates? Is it all of these things? So it's really important to define what that is clearly, and then be able to, again, I'm sort of repeating myself, but I think it's really about the data and looking at the data and measuring it that way. So to give you an example, one of the things that we are doing is always measuring our associate representation as compared to the customers we serve. And that's a really interesting and exciting thing for us to mirror, because we end up, our consumers are most Americans, not to mention millions of people around the world. So we really have one of the most diverse customer bases, and we are constantly striving to make sure that our customers are as diverse as the people who are in leadership levels at all across the company. And so I would say it's really just about defining what that metric is and then constantly measuring it and holding yourself accountable to that measurement.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that the importance of data can ever be overstated here, similar to a product or a service. And you mentioned customers being part of this ecosystem of Walmart and really thinking about anti-racist strategies as well. One of the other kind of topics we wanted to discuss today was around that stakeholder capitalism approach. And I'm going to read the definition because I want to make sure folks understand and have those definitions before we get into it. But stakeholder capitalism is a system that strives to achieve more than profits and a high stock price, looking to serve the interests of everyone in the system. So that means employees, customers, collaborative suppliers, satisfied regulators. Can you tell us how this is different and more unique than capitalism itself on a broad range?
I have an MBA from Wharton, and what I learned is that companies have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders.
Okay.
Stop. End of sentence. Right.
Yep.
That is traditionally how we've learned about it as business professionals. And as our world is changing, and we've talked about it already a lot, besides the fact that we have a moral, ethical, and human responsibility to our customers, to our employees, and to our planet, it's also good for business. We are not going to be able to grow the pie, rise the tides, whatever analogy or business speak you want to use. We are not going to be able to continue to sustain this level of growth without thinking about all of the inputs to this equation. And so the people that are providing the capital and the liquidity to make those strategic investments, to double down on R&D, and to really innovate and be companies of the future are a critical part of this equation. Don't get me wrong. But as Christian Small said when he spoke in Congress, it's actually the people who create the companies, and it's the people who are contributing their labor that are just as critical part of what makes a company successful. And that goes back to Walmart's notion of shared value and the fact that we believe that by doing good, we can also do well, and that these things are actually creating a mutually beneficial relationship instead of one where we have to choose. It's a false choice.
Yeah, I think that is very helpful to understand, and also a very stark difference than what we are traditionally kind of thought the business is around as well. And I definitely agree that a company is only as good as the people are interacting with customers. They're the ones helping to create the product, and they're giving and receiving that critical feedback to up level a company. And there's a lot of research more recently as well in terms of a lot of people staying at organizations where they feel seen, heard, and understood. They feel like their manager cares about them. They feel like the organization also cares about them more than just their end result. And you brought up the educational opportunities before, which I think is a really great example of this too. How do you ensure you show up for companies or you show up for employees? You care about them more than just their work from a company perspective.
This is ingrained in Sam Walton's philosophy, and this is sort of how he built the company, which is why I'm really proud to work at Walmart. Every person matters. Everyone is an associate. Everybody from the, like I mentioned, the people in our fulfillment centers, and then even the executives. Everyone sits in an open bay and all the doors are always open. And it's really about the contributions that every individual is making to this massive thing that we are all working towards. Personally, I can tell you my first week at work, I suffered a death in my family, and I had to take off my first week of work. I had to take off, and not only did everybody understand, but I received flowers in the mail from my team. It was just completely supportive. Do you need more time? What do you need? And that remembering that I'm a person, and I've been experiencing all of these things. And that is absolutely carried through, I think, in the way that all my experience so far at Walmart is the way that everybody is willing to support each other, check in, and also really remember some of the significant things that happen in our life, whether they're wonderful, like having children or other big life events, or whether there's some of the inevitable things that are also really challenging. But I have felt that all of my coworkers and my bosses at Walmart so far have really invested in taking the extra time to get to know that about me. And that's something that I think, again, is really just core to the philosophy of the type of organization that our founders wanted to create.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry for your loss, and
Thank you.
also being vulnerable and sharing that as well on this show too. I think a lot of times we the acts of just showing up for one another, sending flowers, and really asking like, do you need more time, is really important as well. And in terms of we're wearing many hats inside, outside of the company, we don't check our identity when we come into the virtual or in-store, in-person kind of office space. We're in May 2022. Yay for us. We are here again. How is Walmart honoring and celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Heritage Month this year, knowing that, there's a lot of monthly celebrations that folks have, but supporting employees, AAPI employees, is something I'm sure that you do 365 days a year, but definitely wanted to ask.
Thank you for asking. We have 9 different, we call them ARGs, Associate Resource Groups, and we have it's called APAN, and it's run by AAPI, or employees who identify as Asian American, Pacific Islander, and I just want to like take a moment to acknowledge just how many different cultures and countries and regions and languages are built into that short phrase. And I think that even just moving away from lumping a category of human beings and humanity into one continent, Walmart's APAN ARG has hosted several events throughout the month, and we're going to have continue to have many more. Gayatri Agnew, who leads our Accessibility Center of Excellence, interviewed Indra Nooyi about her new book and about what it's like to show up at work. She was the, for anyone who doesn't know, she was the first woman of color to be, I believe, definitely the first South Asian woman of color, as well as an immigrant to the United States. And she was the CEO of PepsiCo. And so it's really more about celebrating all of the richness in the cultures. I had an opportunity to see that interview with Indra. There was also a performance by students who were at Bentonville High School performing traditional dance from the Philippines. Those are just 2 that are off the top of my head, but there are so many events, again, just celebrating the richness and the diversity within that group itself. And then June next month is Pride Month, and it's going to be a similar sort of celebration of all the unique identities that are within that group as well. Again, LGBTQIA is, or LGBT plus, or whatever you call it. I think a lot of times also it tends to be viewed as a monolith, but no group of humans are monolithic, and so it's also about celebrating and supporting all of the different individuals and families that are part of that community, as well as ensuring that we are keeping in mind that respect for the individual and considering the macro environment and the attack on individual rights, making sure that we are celebrating and educating on the importance of people to live their lives in the most free way that is part of our core value.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the different programming opportunities that are going on for kind of both celebrations as well, and also just the opportunity to have this space in the workplace as well, acknowledging the rich kind of identities of different employees, whether different locations, and having that opportunity to engage in these conversations is really important. And we've talked about this a lot too in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but we are all on a continuous journey, a continuous kind of growth mindset, if you will, learning every day. So I wanted to ask, what was your kind of last learning moment in general?
I am Jewish and I am from New York, and I was always taught that Israel is like a homeland, and I learned a lot more about the Israeli occupation of Palestine pretty recently. And it was something that was really difficult because you realize that lots of things that you thought you knew or you thought were facts have been misconstrued purposefully. And I think most shockingly is just how much of that story has been left out. And I feel like it's important to talk about, just given what happened at the funeral recently. It's May 9th. What's today? No, May 16th is this recording. And so just learning about the history of Israel and Palestine in a much more nuanced way, considering the diversity of perspectives. I would say that was my last huge learning moment. That was really a mindset shift for me.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you sharing that as well. And I feel like when I ask this question, there's a lot of kind of stories and just a lot of connectedness around learning, unlearning, and relearning as well. And just kind of really critically thinking about this and a lot of internal work too. Jessie, I feel like our time flew by together, but is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any questions I didn't ask you, or underscoring 1 to 2 key insights you hope folks who are listening really bring with them today?
First, I want to say to anyone who's not sure about how to speak up or how to talk, I just want to let everyone know you're going to offend someone. You're going to make someone mad. Someone's going to be offended, and that's perfectly fine. We're all human. There is no right way, I think, or wrong way to earnestly show up with an air of curiosity and integrity. And when you make that mistake, it's about apologizing, being accountable, doing your homework, and then moving forward. It's okay. Everyone knows that you're going to make a mistake. That's one. And I just want to encourage people to speak up and remember that when they attack any of us, they attack all of us.
Jessie, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Christina. Really a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to get to talk to you some more. Thank you.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. And know it's a requirement for the organization to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.